Hi, good afternoon. My name is Eoin. I chaired the committee. I want to thank the Minister for his kind and generous remarks in introducing us. And I'm going to take you through about a third of the report, and then each of the other two members will each do a third each. I want to thank Professor Drury and the Academy for accommodating us in this entirely apt, not just appropriate, but apt building. We were delighted when they gave us permission to use images of the Cach on the cover, the back cover of the report. And I was, this is a schoolboy thrill, but I was personally thrilled actually to be able to see it on my way in, and I shall spend a bit more time on my way out. I hope the security is good, because otherwise I might be tempted to borrow it.
I feel it may be locked away already.
Oh, that's a pity. I want to thank the Minister for his kind introduction, as I just said. And for those of you who are tweeting, you will notice that at the bottom of every slide there is a hashtag. We have used hashtag CRC. Each year we've done something, so each year it's been CRC 11, CRC 12. This is hashtag CRC 13, and if the Minister is to be believed, it will be implemented under hashtag CRC 14. Hopefully we won't have a CRC 50. Now, we were established in May 2011 by the Minister, Richard Bruton. The two key issues in our terms of reference that proved the most interesting or the most controversial during the course of our work related to identifying barriers to innovation and to fair use. I think it's fair to say in our consultation paper, we took a very broad view of what constituted innovation. We didn't just take a very narrow industry approach to innovation. We saw innovation practically under every stone and around every corner. In a society as based on music and other oral traditions, we saw innovation in a lot of contexts, in a lot of social contexts, not just in a lot of business contexts. And that approach to innovation continued through to our paper, not just from our paper, but through to our report and into our draft bill as well. The process has been a long and ongoing one. We had a series of public meetings, a series of submissions, online questionnaires and so on, and produced the consultation paper and the report that you have in front of you today. On the left is the capital of St. Columba, on the right is the Battle of the Books, the Battle of Culbrena in 561, at which Columba turns up with an army and St. Finian turns up with a few books. Okay. More importantly, we proposed a Copyright and Related Rights Amendment Innovation Bill draft as a direct set of amendments to the Copyright and Related Rights Act 2000, in part because during the course of this process, I was invited to a public meeting in the Law Society in which somebody who had been involved in a similar process in the UK put up 2 slides of things that had happened, consultations that had been set up, draft reports or reports that had been published, at which nothing happened. And then another one, consultation paper, report, nothing happened. And in our view, the one thing that was missing all the way along was some kind of product. They all said something, it would be a good idea if you did something, but they didn't say what that something was in legislative product. So that's why we drafted an innovation amendment bill. In part to cure insomnia, ours as well as yours, and in part to ensure that something might actually happen in the first half of next year. Now, copyright is for everybody. This is Christmas. A pet is for Christmas, not just for life. Or, sorry, a pet is for life, not just for Christmas. Wrong way around there. Copyright is for everybody, not just for the author or the publisher or the user. And the copyright community is very broad. It is the authors, the creators, the rights owners to whom the Minister referred. And it is the collecting agencies through which the rights of copyright owners can be vindicated in terms of royalties and so on. But it is also the ISPs, the intermediaries through which a lot of us get access to a lot of our copyright data now. It is the rights of users Copyright is as much a matter for the users as it is for the producers. It is a matter for the innovators, whether it's financial innovation or social and cultural innovation. It is a matter for the heritage community as well. So when we took a broad view of how copyright has impacts on innovation and what sorts of reforms might be necessary in those circumstances, we took a broad view of who the copyright community might be and what those reforms, if any, might be necessary. And we have produced what we think is a balanced package of a whole range of reforms across all of these areas and in respect of all of these members of the copyright community. Don't like the word stakeholder, but I'm almost certain I'll fall into it at some stage. But broadly speaking, these are the members and stakeholders of the copyright community. And one of our key suggestions is that the community should bring forward a copyright council, by means of which copyright can be encouraged and protected amongst every member, right across the whole range of the copyright community. It should be created, we argue, by the copyright community, not just by a particular group of stakeholders, not by the minister, not by just the people in this room, but the copyright community broadly. It should be an independent self-funding body. Its independence is very important so that its views can be taken seriously, and its self-funding is important so that it doesn't seem to be captured by one particular paymaster, whether it's the state or whether it's a particular aspect of the particular stakeholder aspect of the community. It should have a widely representative board. For those of you who managed to get through to almost the end of the bill, you will see that in the schedule to the bill we set out in some detail how we recommend the board of the Copyright Council should be constituted so that the whole range of the copyright community can be properly represented at the Copyright Council. And if something comes forward that meets the legislative criteria, then its existence can be acknowledged by the minister and the supports and underpinnings in the legislation can therefore take effect. We suggest 3 significant services that could be offered by the Copyright Council. It could implement a digital copyright exchange to make clearances easier, not just in Ireland, but engaging with exchanges in the UK and Europe and perhaps further afield. It could provide an alternative dispute resolution service, which would be a matter of agreement. You can't be forced or compelled to adopt the Council ADR service, but if you do, it means that a lot of issues that currently go to court that don't need to go to court could have a formal consensual resolution process. And it could provide a location for an orphan works licensing service. This is being proposed in respect of some works by a European Union directive, and our argument is that that's a good starting point for a more broadly based solution, and a potential location for that solution is the Copyright Council. So its specific services would relate to the digital exchange, the alternative dispute resolution system, and orphan works, but it would have a more general education, advice and advocacy function to ensure that copyright is understood and respected broadly amongst the society generally. It would have no role in making policy and legislation. That would continue to be a matter for the minister and the department and the Oireachtas. It would be for the controller in the first instance to implement any policy as made and to administer the state's formal ID infrastructure, and it would be the courts to provide for ultimate resolution of disputes. But if it is clear what its functions are, which are social and educational, we think that there is a great deal of merit in the Copyright Council, and we propose it to the copyright community, that is to say to you, to consider its establishment. And the analogy we drew was the analogy with the Press Council and the Press Ombudsman, which is an independent body created by the press and recognised by the Minister in a similar way to we are proposing. The Copyright Council will be created by the copyright community and recognised by the Minister. So that's our first broad area of recommendation relating to the Press Council. I'm going to talk about a couple of other issues as well, and then I'm going to hand over to Patricia and then to Steve. The first issue that I want to talk about is fair dealing. And the Act at the moment says that fair dealing means the making use of a work which has already been made lawfully available for a purpose and to an extent which will not unreasonably prejudice the interests of the owner of copyright. This was a section that did not appear in previous copyright legislation and does not appear in equivalent copyright legislation in the UK or Canada or Australia. We can see the merit in a starting point definition, but a starting point definition is potentially very constraining, especially given subsequent developments in the UK and Canadian courts relating to fair use subsequent to the introduction of this definition. So we recommend that the word means there in the top right hand corner be revised so that fair dealing includes this standard definition, and that therefore all of the common law developments relating to fair dealing in other jurisdictions can continue to be relied upon in Irish courts where appropriate. Section 50 and 53 of the Copyright and Related Rights Act 2000 contain two education-related exceptions, and following the European Union Copyright Directive, we recommend that the word education be added in those circumstances so that it's for the purposes of education, research and private study in section 50, and in the course of education or preparation for education in section 53, subject to, and this is very important, subject to a licensing override, so that where there is already a license or whether a license can be developed, it can't be enrun by the fair dealing exception. Section 104 of the Copyright and Related Rights Act 2000 contains a relatively small exception for in relation to disability, in relation to copies made for persons with a disability. And it's considerably narrower than the level of exceptions allowed for by the European Union Directive or for the range of exceptions allowed by the Marrakesh Treaty, which was concluded during the summer dealing with these issues. We recommend, therefore, that the fair dealing disability exception in section 104 be reformed to come into line with the full range of the European Union Directive exceptions and to take account of the obligations soon to devolve on the state in relation to the Marrakesh Treaty, and therefore we have recommended an expanded and in fact highly dubbed definition of disability. There was a technical problem. If you really have a problem sleeping tonight, I recommend that you take a look at what we say about trying to solve a technical problem relating to the definition of disability in the Copyright Act. That will bore you to tears. But having solved the technical problem, we recommend an amendment to the disability provisions so as to come into line, as I say, with the European Union Directive and the Marrakesh Treaty. We recommend that it should be possible for individuals to make persons with a disability to make copies for their own personal use, to make that the exception allow them to do that. That designated bodies should be able to share copies that they have made, so that, to take a simple example, if a student of mine is in receipt of a digital copy, an accessible copy of a book from the Trinity Disability Services, and a student of Steve's next year wants to use the same book, we see no reason why the UCC Disability Services should go through the process of generating that accessible copy all over again. We see every reason why the Trinity Disability Service ought to be able to share it with the UCC Disability Service, and this is a very important practical issue, we think. And we raised the question as to whether there ought to be some obligation on publishers to cooperate in the production of accessible copies in these circumstances. Briefly, heritage. This is an image of the Long Room in Trinity before the second story was opened out, so that it reflects where we are today. And we, in the context of heritage, the European Union Directive allows for format shifting for archival or preservation purposes. The UK recommendations relating to this issue have also allowed, or are also recommending in favour of format shifting for archival or preservation purposes, and we make a similar recommendation in respect to libraries or archives. We think that there are, in the context of a public lecture in a heritage institution, that if an institution is making use of an item in its archive in the context of a public lecture, it should be entitled to do so without a problem, and similarly in the context of catalogues for exhibitions. And finally, we recommend that the standard thing, one of the two things I hear about Trinity Library when I get involved in conversations down the pub about Trinity Library, admittedly not very often, most conversations down the pub relate to rugby rather than libraries, but when they do deal with libraries, two things about the Trinity Library. One is the Book of Kells, and the other is copyright deposit. The fact that Trinity is entitled to, it depends on who you hear it from, but a copy of every book from everywhere all the time. Now, if we got something like that, we would be swamped, but we do have copyright deposit entitlement in respect of print. Copyright deposit institutions in the UK that are entitled to print deposit have recently been also become entitled to digital deposit, and we make a recommendation that the Irish copyright deposit institutions should also be entitled to digital deposit in the same way. Having set up the copyright community and some of the exceptions and other issues that we have dealt with, I'd like now to pass over to Patricia McGovern to take over. Thank you very much.